Millions of people all over the world look at Hollywood as the place where dreams come true and anyone can make it. But unfortunately for some who embark on their Hollywood dreams, they instead find themselves trapped in a nightmare surrounded by famous monsters. Sean Combs is the latest monster to be unmasked and revealed to allegedly be committing heinous actions. Combs' unspeakable actions are alleged to have started decades ago, and today we're going to explore Combs and some of his closest friendships and collaborators across the last 20 years. In the early 2000s, while working on his hit show with MTV, Combs met Hollywood's latest golden boy, Ashton Kutcher. Combs and Kutcher created a fabricated story for how they met, but later in the video, we'll discuss the alleged real story, as this encounter with Combs would set up 20 years of friendship and showed Combs that Kutcher, supported by his best friend Danny Masterson, could keep a secret. Combs enjoyed spending time with Kutcher so much, he started inviting him to do everything friends would do together. In 2003, Combs decided that he and Kutcher should form a partying group and invited Danny Masterson and Wilder Valderrama, Kutcher's best friends and co-stars, to be a part of the group that he dubbed the New Hollywood Rat Pack. Throughout the early 2000s, this Rat Pack partied together, and Kutcher and Combs finished out the first decade of their friendship, with Kutcher co-hosting Combs' infamous White Party in 2009. Throughout the 2010s, Ashton Kutcher and Sean Combs expanded their relationships, with Kutcher inviting Combs into the world of venture capitalism through WeWork and several other endeavors. As WeWork's strategic partner, it was Kutcher who brought Combs into WeWork, a company that has been mired in controversy due to the egregious and ruthless self-centered decisions by another of Kutcher's closest friends, WeWork's former CEO, Adam Neumann. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The friendship and collaboration that spanned 20 years of Ashton Kutcher and Sean Combs and their forgotten Hollywood Rat Pack. We'll be discussing the shocking and disturbing allegations surrounding all four of this group's members. There's recently been a lot of attempts to wipe and erase most of the evidence of this Rat Pack, and so we'll be looking back at long-forgotten interviews, comments, and clips. Then finally, we'll discuss Kutcher and Combs' business dealings and their relationship in recent years. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, and let's dive in to the dark and twisted world of Sean Combs, Ashton Kutcher, and their hidden Hollywood Rat Pack. If you try and Google the new Rat Pack, followed by any of the names of the people in the group, you'll be brought to results to very few articles with some minor mentions, but the vast majority of results are made up of articles now citing Ashton Kutcher distancing himself from Sean Combs. It allegedly seems as though history is attempting to be rewritten by Kutcher and his high-powered and highly paid PR team. Kutcher and his wife Mila Kunis have spent decades immersed in the world of Scientology, with not only scores of their closest friends being active members, but many members of their large staff are also practicing Scientologists. Kutcher is no stranger to Scientology's media tactics and employs them alongside his own very successful and efficient PR and marketing team. Up until the raid of Sean Combs' home in early 2004, Kutcher and his wife Mila Kunis appear to have had their PR teams working overtime to fix the damage to their reputations after their loud support of their former co-star, Ashton Kutcher's best friend and fellow Rat Pack member, the serial convicted rapist Danny Masterson. After the raid, Kutcher's team now seems to be attempting to deploy the same tactics when it comes to trying to distance Kutcher from his decades-long close ties to Sean Combs, who was arrested last month in September 2024 on a laundry list of monstrous charges. While Kutcher is trying everything to control the damage to his career and his public reputation, he's unfortunately forgotten one thing that anyone who spends a decent amount of time on the internet knows. The internet is forever, and there's no erasing that. No matter how hard you or your PR team try to,
Even Miss Gloria can tell you that. If you even try and Google some of the articles that we're going to talk about in this video that discuss this new Rat Pack, which was made up of Kutcher, Danny Masterson, Wilder Valderrama, Jamie Foxx, and Sean Combs, a lot of these articles have mysteriously disappeared. But as we just established, the internet is forever. I will show and quote segments on the screen, but as always with my videos, the sources are all in the Google link in the pinned comment and the description box, and a few of the links need to be accessed using the instructions because, as I just said, a lot of them have been erased. We're going to go over all of the information, but that is why I provide the sources so that people can go and see the full story, the context, and where the information is coming from. One thing to keep in mind, however, throughout this whole video is that there might be pictures and articles that we go over that show or mention people spending time with Sean Combs, and some of these people may have just had their entire interaction with him be that picture or that one event that's being referenced. Because given how famous Sean Combs was and for how long he was famous, I'm sure there are thousands of people who had 5-minute or 1-minute interactions with him, and that was it. I do and think it's important to remember that when looking back on all of this. And then also on the other side, I know there are some people currently, like Ashton Kutcher, trying to say, oh, I just took a picture with him a couple of times at a few events 20 years ago, when in reality, as you'll see from this video, there is 25 years of not just pictures at events, but them saying over and over again what good friends they are, going to basketball games, going to events, co-hosting white parties together, going here, going there, doing absolutely everything you would with someone you had a friendship with, even working out with, and also even getting involved in investments and business things. So, and Kutcher and Combs were allegedly so close, in fact, that when Combs was forming this new Rat Pack with him, Kutcher was able to bring in Masterson and Wilmer Valderrama, who were a lot less famous than Kutcher or Diddy, because yes, they were on that 70s show that was a really popular show, but in case you weren't around in the 2000s, Ashton Kutcher was the guy of that time. He was everywhere and he had every show and movie, and of course Diddy has been extremely famous for 30 years basically. Like, Masterson and Valderrama were nowhere near the level of Diddy and Kutcher, so them being brought in was through their very close friendship with Ashton Kutcher. In the early 2000s, like, that was Masterson and Valderrama's height of fame because that 70s show was so huge. But by the late 2000s, Masterson and Valderrama were nowhere near as famous or relevant, and Kutcher and Combs still probably were even more famous then. And they actually kind of subbed out Masterson and Valderrama, even though Ashton Kutcher is still, Danny Masterson is his lifelong best friend, and they actually brought in other members into this Rat Pack. This was around the time that Ashton Kutcher was co-hosting the White Party with Diddy and was cheating multiple times on Demi Moore, and so they brought in Jamie Foxx, Jay-Z, and Tyrese Gibson, and we'll get into all of that later, as there was a lot of other things going on during this time period that we'll talk about. So the main members of this Rat Pack group that was formed in around about 2002 was, as I said, Kutcher, Danny Masterson, Wilder Valderrama, and Sean Combs. This version of the Rat Pack lasted about 6 years, but as I said, in 2009, they kind of swapped some members out. So I want to briefly go over who each of these members are, and not only who they are in the entertainment industry, but also all of the accusations against them and crimes in some cases. And then we will go into discussing everything about this group and what they got up to in the early 2000s, because it is something that has been quite lost to time, because that time period, we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet the way it exists now. And even Ashton Kutcher and Danny Masterson themselves have said, oh, it was so great that we were famous and doing all of this debaucherous stuff then, because, oh boy, now everybody has cell phones and we wouldn't be able to do everything that we did. And as you'll see throughout this video, while there wasn't people posting videos of them doing these things on social media, there were people with eyeballs and there was reports of what was going on, and also people in the entertainment industry the same way. There's been people discussing Sean Combs and Masterson for over 2 decades. There were people discussing these things. You just have to know either who these people are, you have to know where to look, and they have been trying to bury a lot of this stuff, but as we established, the internet is forever. So we'll be getting into all of this, and let's just briefly go over who each of these Rat Pack members are, and then we'll dial it back to 2002 when the new Rat Pack was formed. But 2003 was, I would say, when they were at their height and were being most blatant about what they were getting up to. So we're going to start with Sean Combs. I'm sure most people who are watching this are at least familiar with who Sean Combs is because, as I said, he's been extremely famous for 3 decades. And I also think most people know who he is because it's not like he's just a rapper or he's just in fashion. He has done everything. He's a rapper, singer, songwriter, record producer, entrepreneur in the fashion industry, film, television. He's done everything. And he was extremely successful and exceedingly wealthy. He was born in 1969 in Harlem, New York, and he began his career in the early 1990s as a talent scout for Uptown Records. He soon founded his own label, Bad Boy Records, in 1993, and the company became a very big player in the East Coast hip-hop scene. Under Bad Boy, he launched countless careers, and one of the biggest artists that he launched was the Notorious B.I.G. After Combs became successful with his own music career, he began to expand into these other areas. His fashion line, Sean John, was super successful. I feel like every guy in the 2000s had at least something from Sean John, and he also began building basically a media empire, and he moved into other areas like film. He even had alcohol brands like Croc Vodka, and he also was very successful in television. In the second season of Making the Band, he took over the show, and that was taken over from Lou Pearlman, who Lou Pearlman put together and managed Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. I have discussed Lou Pearlman in my Justin Timberlake video, and I swear everyone I discuss on this channel, they're all connected. And it's not as if you have to go through like 3 or 6 people. It's a straight line from one to the other. So we'll talk about that at the end because there's also some very clever people who have noticed some little breadcrumbs that have been put down in relation to Diddy and with the That 70s Show cast in particular. So this video is the one that connects a few, so we'll talk about that at the end. But Lou Pearlman is another person that not only has a lot of alleged heinous acts against his young musicians, but he also was involved in a lot of fraud. He ran the longest Ponzi scheme in US history. Longest as in over the longest period of time. The biggest Ponzi scheme, of course, I think most people know is Enron, but Pearlman managed and founded Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, as I said, but he also had a variety of other musicians like Aaron Carter. Over the years, Diddy earned a reputation for being a very savvy businessman, and he accumulated an insane amount of wealth. He was alleged to be worth somewhere close to $1 billion. And it wasn't just financial success. He not only was so connected throughout Hollywood and the music industry, but he also got so many accolades, Grammy Awards. He was on Forbes' list of wealthiest entertainers. And just last year, he was given the key to New York City. Diddy has also made headlines for his whole persona and how he lives his life. There's articles that don't really exist anymore, but are dating back to the early 2000s, right during this time period that we're going to discuss, where there are interviews that are 10, 12 pages long, going through a whole day and night with him in Paris, where he's with Danny Masterson's wife, or well, ex-wife now, Bijou Phillips, and the Hilton sisters. And in this article interview, I mean, I think most people reading this anytime would be like, red flag. But reading it now, oh my God, you're like, this was just like out there, that the interviewer goes through this whole day and night, and every couple of paragraphs, the interviewer's writing, oh, Diddy's executive assistant came over to me and was like, this is off the record, this is off the record. And then he just jumps forward like hours in time. And then they'll be at a strip club and Diddy says something insane. And then he says, oh, the assistant came over again and was like, this is off the record, this is off the record. And then they jump forward to like another location. So obviously I don't know what was going on, but when you read it now, you're just like, oh, holy crap. Like just people just like ignore. Well, they did. We're going to discuss that. So sorry, we're getting sidetracked. This what happens on ADHD channels. So for many years, the allegations surrounding Combs and his whole way that he was conducting himself was somewhat an open secret in Hollywood, as we've just said. And most people knew that he was a dangerous, violent, and harmful person who allegedly hurt many men and many, many women. In recent years, Combs has faced more allegations and a series of serious ones. In recent years, Combs has faced a series of extremely serious allegations and legal challenges that have spilled out of these Hollywood circles and into the mainstream. Recently, these allegations became more than secrets and whispers, and in just a few short years, Sean Combs' life has taken a drastic turn. Combs' controversies center around accusations of sexual assault, harassment, and other misconduct, with some of the allegations dating back to the 1990s. The most significant and publicized case that involved these accusations with Combs, and the case that really ignited everything, was when Combs' former girlfriend and client, the singer Cassandra Ventura, also known as Cassie, filed a lawsuit against Combs last year in November 2023. Cassie alleged years of physical and emotional abuse during her relationship with Combs, and they began dating in the mid-2000s. Cassie's lawsuit claimed that Combs not only abused her, but also sought to control her career, limiting her artistic freedom and pressuring her into a toxic environment. There also have been videos that have come out of Combs being absolutely. There has also been a lot of people who have gone back and combed through interviews and pictures and videos and red carpet moments where, when you look at it now, it just seems that Cassie was really, really being put through absolute hell. And a lot of the time, even she would have to wear sunglasses. And the lawsuit talked about how she would be covering bruises and things like that. And again, as we'll go over in this video, this isn't totally new information to some people. These things have been talked about, and I'll even show like podcasts that have discussed these things. But the problem is, until there is proof, or not even proof, but until someone really famous comes out and says, I've seen this, or this happened, or whatever it is, a lot of the time when it's just regular people making these allegations about things they've seen, so people that work behind the scenes, or even people that are working like restaurants or stores and they see something, most of the time, if they speak out, they are completely shut down, or they're attacked by fans, or there's tons of other things. And I will really get into this later because I'll give you some examples of even things that I've seen and spoken about, and that because I'm a regular person, people, they either don't want to believe it, even when sometimes it's staring you in the face, or they just think that you're like a conspiracy person or something. So that's why it's also very difficult with doing YouTube in a way, because yes, you can go over like, okay, this is just what was talked about in the lawsuit, but then you want to give the other information that's out there, and you have to go through it all and make sure that it's not just some nutcase like putting out whatever they want. But when there is years and years of people saying things like Sean Combs is allegedly a monster, and there's hundreds of people saying these same three things, you have to think, that doesn't sound like complete, conspiracy. Like Danny Masterson, again, we'll get into, is a perfect example where there is so much evidence of these women saying what happened to them, and still, go and look at my Danny Masterson video. Like, I go through 2 hours of talking about these women were giving so much proof of what happened, and there's still people in those comments that'll say, where's the proof? Where's the proof? And it's like, what do you want? Do you want a videotape of what happened? Is that the only proof? And I feel like there's still some people who'd make excuses. Sorry, I've gone off again on a tangent, but I will get into that a lot later because I will give you specific examples. And it's why when talking about these very famous people, it is difficult too, because some people just have this image in their mind that they just don't want to hear the truth sometimes. Combs rushed to settle this lawsuit with Cassie one day after it was filed. But as I said, this lawsuit was the spark that set fire to Combs's empire. Other women began making similar accusations, spurred on by Cassie's bravery to publicly face not only an unbelievably famous man, but a man who was exceedingly rich, powerful, and extremely dangerous. The allegations against Combs involve a variety of claims, mainly SA, coercion, mistreatment of women, and those either involved women who were linked to Combs romantically or worked with him and they were under his label or management, or like Cassie, they were one and the same. Many of these claims were brought forward anonymously, and all of these people painted the same picture. Combs wielded immense power in the entertainment industry, was unbelievably wealthy, and had a propensity for violence. And for decades, he manipulated and silenced his victims, allegedly. After everything with Cassie and the other accusations coming forward, it wasn't long until the authorities began investigating Combs too. This was in connection with everything we've just said, and also connections to trafficking and involvement with other questionable business practices. In March 2024, Combs's homes in New York, California, and Florida were all raided, and an unbelievable amount of digital evidence and physical evidence was taken by the authorities. Everybody knows about the huge quantities of baby oil taken from Combs's house, but I really cannot get over the digital evidence. There was 96 electronic devices taken from his homes, thousands and thousands of hours worth of video, and almost 100 terabytes of data. In case you aren't familiar with terabytes and videos and things like that, I cannot tell you how much 100 terabytes of data is. My videos are usually an hour and a half to 2 hours 15, and I have 3 terabytes on my computer, and that is for everything on my computer, all the editing software that I use, and I can usually keep up to 15 or so projects on there. And I don't just mean the 15 hour and a half, 2 hour, 15 videos. I have the final of all of them. And then I have not only every clip that I've used and the whole video, but also clips that you never see, so many images, all of my raw footage, and I cannot tell you how many times I fuck up. So this, if you see 2 hours, I guarantee you I've recorded 4 or 5 hours, and all the audio, everything. And I keep 15 projects with all of that, and it's 3 terabytes. Can you imagine how much 100 terabytes is? It's just an unbelievable amount of video. Combs was arrested and indicted in September 2024 on charges of racketeering, sex trafficking by force, and transportation for purposes of prostitution. He has denied all accusations of wrongdoing, maintaining that he has been the victim of a smear campaign, with his lawyer stating that the claims are categorically false and have been driven by ulterior motives, including financial gain. If you've seen Diddy's lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, he may look familiar because, as I said, all of these people are connected. Mark Agnifilo previously represented Keith Raniere, who was the leader of the Nexium sex cult that Allison Mack from Smallville was in. Diddy has tried multiple times to be granted bail. I do believe he can try 2 more times, and he's even attempted to offer up his $50 million home, his mother's home, and his kids' passports, among a variety of other things and stipulations as his collateral. Bail has not been granted, and although he is still attempting via these other methods, he's awaiting his trial in federal custody at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. He's living with another cellmate who also is infamous, Sam Bankman-Fried. He's someone that I haven't covered, but I did for a long time consider it. On October 1st, 2024, the Washington Post reported that as many as 124 men and women would be filing more lawsuits against Combs. These assaults were alleged to have taken place during the 2000s and the 2010s. Half of these alleged victims say they reported these assaults to the police or medical staff or other authorities, and some claim to have been given substances and offered hush money. There also is allegedly minors included in these lawsuits. Additionally, potential defendants other than Combs are also going to be named, according to the lawyer Tony Busby. He has been quoted as saying that these names will shock you. Due to the fact Combs has not been granted bail, his team has been applying pressure for a speedy trial, and on October 10th, the judge set Combs' trial date for May 5th, 2025. However, I really find that hard to believe that they will go to trial then, but we'll discuss that later. So from one alleged monster to a convicted serial monster, Danny Masterson grew up acting in commercials, and in his teens and early 20s, he began appearing in television, and he also grew up in an acting family and a Scientology family. His mother, Carol, and his 3 siblings are all Scientologists, and his mother manages the careers of all of her children. Of course, Masterson was cast alongside Kutcher on That 70s Show, and Kutcher and Masterson have been lifelong best friends ever since. This show premiered in 1998. All of the principal cast members of That 70s Show, with the exception of Topher Grace, have described Masterson as family, and they've all been extremely close for the last almost 3 decades. Masterson had a few other TV shows after That 70s Show, but none came anywhere near close to the success of That 70s Show. In 2016, Masterson co-starred and co-executive produced a new show for Netflix with his best friend Ashton Kutcher titled The Ranch. At one stage, The Ranch did have a That 70s Show reunion, again with the exception of Topher Grace. Again, just like Combs over the 90s and 2000s, accusations were whispered about Masterson, his behavior, and his treatment of women. While working on the ranch in 2016, accusations came out about Masterson essaying multiple women. These accusations were made public in March 2017 when 3 women filed essay allegations against Masterson, prompting an investigation by the LAPD. Masterson, through his agent, denied these allegations for almost 1 full year and retained Masterson in his starring role and very lucrative executive producer credit on Netflix. In December 2017, a 4th accuser against Masterson came forward, and Kutcher fought for Masterson to stay with the production, which he did. A few days after this, the Huffington Post published an article where, while at a youth soccer game, one of Masterson's accusers started talking to another parent who turned out to be Andy Yeatman, who was a Netflix executive. When Masterson's accuser asked Yeatman why Netflix hadn't taken action with Masterson and why he was still in these 2 extremely high-paying positions, Yeatman admitted that "we don't believe them," referencing the victims, but Yeatman didn't know he was talking to one of the victims. Netflix was embarrassed by the story and they fired both Yeatman and Masterson. A few weeks after Masterson was fired by Netflix, a 5th woman made similar accusations, and Masterson was dropped by his talent agent of over 20 years. On June 17, 2020, Masterson was charged with raping a 23-year-old woman in 2001, a 28-year-old woman in early 2003, and a 23-year-old woman in late 2003. The 3 counts came after a 3-year investigation. Masterson was brought to trial to face these charges, and all of his victims were referred to as Jane Doe, but most of them have revealed themselves now in the media. Masterson was brought to trial on these charges, and the 3 Jane Does all brought forward on the stand 3 eerily similar stories about Masterson's attack and his assault to them. All 3 Jane Does reported their attacks from Masterson to Scientology officials, as they were all members of the church, and as per the rules of Scientology, they were told not to report to the authorities. However, one of the Jane Does did report Masterson to the police, even though it was going against the rules of Scientology, and she knew she could potentially lose her family, friends, job, community, and her entire life. Although Masterson was charged with attacks on 3 women, there were many, many, many more women who came forward, some of which spoke at the trial as witnesses, and up until now, there have been 17 women who have alleged they have been victims of Masterson, and those are only the ones that have spoken out. There have been others that even people have sent me messages about, but obviously I have no way of vetting any of that, but there are a lot that have spoken on the record and given information to the Jane Does that were in the trial that these women wouldn't have been able to get these certain bits of information anywhere else. The jury found Masterson unanimously guilty on 2 of the 3 charges, and the 3rd charge was deadlocked, with 8 of the 12 jury voting guilty on the final charge. After being found guilty, Masterson was immediately remanded into custody, with his sentencing being several months away. This all happened last summer, and his sentencing was in September 2023. While awaiting sentencing, Masterson's family sought out letters of support for him in hopes the judge would run his sentence concurrently, which means he would serve both sentences of 15 years at the same time, rather than running them consecutively, which would make it a 30-year sentence instead of just the 15. Masterson's family wrote letters themselves, of course, but they also sought out prominent Scientologists and other celebrities to write letters also. In the end, over 50 letters were sent on behalf of Masterson, giving glowing statements about him and his character. These letters were written by all of Masterson's Masterson's siblings, Chris from Malcolm in the Middle, Alana from The Walking Dead, and Will and Jordan. But there also were many other celebrities like Giovanni Ribisi, Eric Balfour, and Deborah Jo Rupp and Kurtwood Smith, who played Topher Grace's parents, Red and Kitty Foreman, on That 70s Show. And I'm sure most people are aware, definitely if they watch this channel regularly, that Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis also wrote letters for Masterson and telling the judge not only did they think that he was a wonderful person, but also that he was someone they would leave their own daughter alone with, and how he was just the most amazing, amazing person. And they both really, really highlighted how, in their eyes, Masterson was anti-substance use and how he had been the reason that they didn't fall into that lifestyle themselves, even though there's plenty of people who've spoken about Masterson, Kunis, and Kutcher all partaking in these activities, allegedly. The reason that it is of particular note that they highlighted this fact in the letters was because Masterson was actually convicted for not only the women, but for giving them substances to incapacitate them. And additionally, every single woman who has ever levied accusations against Masterson has stated that they were given a substance to incapacitate them. Additionally, it is also important to remember that all of these letters were written after Masterson was found guilty. The letters did not sway the judge, and Danny Masterson was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. He currently is in the California men's colony after being moved several times, and shortly after he was remanded into prison, his wife Bijou Phillips divorced him. Moving on to Wilmer Valderrama, he was born in 1980 in Miami, Florida. Then he moved to Venezuela at the age of 3 and grew up there until he was 13 when his family moved back to the United States. Of course, just like Kutcher and Masterson, Wilmer got his big break on That 70s Show, and Valderrama had 3 very public relationships that he started with very famous actresses, which is what most people know him for outside of That 70s Show. According to all 3 of the women who dated Valderrama, their relationships began when all of the women were underage, although at the time they and he denied this, and only later have they come out and said the truth when most people knew what was going on, and I'll explain why. But his relationship with Mandy Moore started when he was 20 and she was 15, and there is a rather infamous interview of Valderrama being questioned about this by Howard Stern. They discussed their relationship in this very vulgar manner, and Valderrama claimed to be the first person to sleep with Moore. Mandy Moore later came on the Howard Stern show herself and pretty much denied everything that Valderrama had claimed. While at the height of his That 70s Show fame, Valderrama began dating the 17-year-old at the time Lindsay Lohan. At this time, Lindsay Lohan was one of the biggest celebrities in the world. She was the it girl, and Valderrama and Lohan were claiming that they were just good friends, and Lohan said that Valderrama was like a brother to her. Then magically, at the stroke of midnight when Lohan turned 18, only then did they begin dating. Valderrama at the time was 24, almost 25, and there weren't really a lot of people that bought this. Lohan had a successful career for many years, but when dating Valderrama, that really was the height of her fame. This was when she did movies like Herbie Fully Loaded and, of course, Mean Girls, which is probably her most iconic role along with The Parent Trap. Prior to dating Valderrama, there were a lot of rumors about Lindsay Lohan dating Ashton Kutcher when she, of course, was 16. And allegedly, she started dating Valderrama after Kutcher broke up with her. Lohan did actually appear on that 70s show with Kutcher and Valderrama, and that was kind of portrayed in the show. There was an incident between Lohan, Kutcher, and Masterson towards the end of her relationship with Valderrama, and this incident took place at a restaurant and self-described celebrity bar called La Poubelle, which is a favorite spot of Kutcher, Valderrama, and Masterson during their heyday, especially as it was Danny Masterson's favorite place, probably still is, but obviously he's in prison, due to the fact that La Poubelle is steps away from the Scientology Celebrity Center in Los Angeles. La Poubelle was mentioned several times actually at Masterson's trial, as not only did the owner show up practically every day in court and write him a letter, but the bar was actually referenced because this was one of the places where Masterson was allegedly putting substances into his victims' drinks. The incident that's alleged to have taken place at La Poubelle with Lohan and Kutcher, Masterson, and Valderrama is when Lindsay Lohan got into a very heated argument with Kutcher and Masterson in the middle of this bar. The argument was allegedly over Masterson's behavior and treatment of another woman, and Lohan said she was going to call the cops on Danny Masterson. Masterson then had Lohan forcibly removed from the bar. So Valderrama dated Mandy Moore, a very young, popular singer-actress. He then dated Lindsay Lohan, and then in 2010, he went on to date another young, very famous actress-singer, Demi Lovato. At the time, he did the whole thing again, saying, "We were just friends, I was like a brother to her," and then boom, at the stroke of midnight, all of a sudden things changed and he started dating Demi Lovato at 12:01 after her 18th birthday. Valderrama was 29 years old when he started dating Demi, over a decade older than her, and they dated for close to 7 years, breaking up in June 2016. And just like with Lindsay Lohan, Demi Lovato did admit years later that she did start dating Valderrama prior to turning 18. 6 years after their breakup, Demi released a song called 29 that seemed to call out Wilmer for their inappropriate relationship. The song was widely interpreted as a condemnation of Valderrama now that the singer herself was 29. And when asked directly about the lyrics, Lovato stated, "I feel like the song says it all." Many people have looked at the fact that Valderrama didn't write a letter for Masterson as some sort of indication that they're not very close anymore, but I just think that Valderrama either was told not to do it because obviously it doesn't look good, especially with his dating history, but I think the much more likely thing is that Valderrama did not want to draw attention to his affiliation with Masterson and Kutcher, given everything we're going to discuss in this letter, because Valderrama still was close to them. He still had many episodes on the ranch that he did. They're photographed at events together, and there are businesses and things that they've done too. So we will get into that. And they also all do play poker and things like that as well. As most people who watch this channel know, unfortunately, when I was a lot younger, I used to work in the gambling industry. And that is actually how I first started to hear a lot of this stuff we're going to discuss about Kutcher, Masterson, and Valderrama, because yes, there's so many casinos and huge events, but especially the celebrity and very high profile poker players, that's like a lot smaller world. And now, and over the past few years, of course, most of the stuff that I've heard has been through the industry and like friends that I have there, but a lot of the stuff that I very first heard was through their gambling and poker play. And these people, because they're sitting there playing for hours and hours and there's drinking and all of that stuff, a lot of things come out, and especially in these home games that celebrities like to play in, they are often very small, invite only, very high buy-ins, and they're in hotel suites and things like that. If you want to know what those sort of things are like, I really recommend the book Molly's Game by the woman who ran a lot of these big celebrity games with Tobey Maguire, who, what a nightmare, and Leonardo DiCaprio, Ben Affleck, and she actually had a movie made out of her book too that stars Jessica Chastain. I don't remember people really talking about it a lot or it being a really big thing, especially because they really give a lot of dirt on a lot of the celebrities that were involved in these games, and Jessica Chastain is in it. It's an Aaron Sorkin movie, and especially the book, I think is pretty accurate for what these games are like. And our final Rat Pack member, Ashton Kutcher. I did do a video fairly recently on Kutcher and his wife Mila Kunis that I released one day before Diddy was arrested. If you've seen that video, the Danny Masterson one or the That 70s Show one, which also had interesting timing of a release, then that's awesome, and thank you so much for watching. But if you haven't, that's totally fine. You don't need to have seen those videos to watch this one. And if you've seen those videos, don't worry, it's not going to be all just repeated information. Of course, the beginning, the summaries, you have to kind of catch everybody up, and there's only so many unique ways of summarizing a person's background, but this will all be different information about all these people. And we're talking about this time period that is very specific, and I haven't really gone into in these other videos because there's just so much about these people. So if you watch this video and you think, oh, you didn't talk about this or you didn't talk about that, most likely I talked about it in these other videos. But as I said, I don't like to just repeat the same information that I've said, and also that's why this video isn't just Diddy did this and this is what's happening in court, because I like my videos to just not be the same regurgitated information and to not just be, a summary from CNN or something like that. Ashton Kutcher was born in Iowa in 1978, and as I'm sure a lot of people are aware, he has a twin brother called Michael. During his senior year of high school, he broke into his high school to steal money and a test, and he was actually arrested and convicted of a third-degree burglary charge. He lost his college scholarships due to this arrest, and due to it being a felony, he also lost his right to vote. As is usually the case with extremely wealthy people, they can buy things others can't. And about a decade ago, after he became very successful, he actually had his record expunged and had his right to vote restored. Kutcher went to the University of Iowa for a very short period of time, and he was actually kicked out of his apartment for being too wild and loud, according to him. And he is quoted as saying, "I thought I knew everything. I was partying and woke up many mornings not knowing what I'd done the night before." Kutcher dropped out of the University of Iowa to pursue modeling, and he once modeled with Tom Welling from Smallville. As I said, all the people that we talk about on this channel are connected. Kutcher was bored modeling and decided to pursue acting. Almost immediately, he was cast on 2 shows at the same time, and he had to make a decision between which one he was going to choose. He ended up picking a show called Teenage Wasteland, which is better known today as That 70s Show. That 70s Show made Kutcher a huge star immediately, and as I said before, the show was very successful, and the last few seasons of the show, Kutcher was making $250,000 per week or per episode. And keep in mind, that's 20 years ago money. In the later half of That 70s Show, Kutcher launched a new reality show on MTV called Punk'd, where he would basically prank celebrities. And this show was how he met and befriended Sean Combs. Combs at the time was working on his MTV show Making the Band, which we spoke about earlier. Kutcher and Combs not only became friends and sounding boards for one another, but they also frequently partied together, hung out, went to sporting events, sat together at award shows on their request, worked together, gambled together, traveled together, and also got involved in businesses and investing together. Kutcher, in fact, is the only ever person to be named as a co-host of one of Sean Combs' parties. Kutcher and Combs co-hosted the final white party ever in July 2009 in the Hamptons. 2009 was also when Kutcher was prolifically cheating on his then wife Demi Moore. Despite receiving a lot of poor reviews for his acting ability throughout his career, Kutcher has been extremely successful throughout film and television, at one time being the highest paid actor on TV when he took over Charlie Sheen's role on 2.5 Men, where he co-starred with Danny Masterson's cousin Angus T. Jones. At the time, Kutcher was relieved to land the lucrative deal as he'd lost a fortune in the 2008 financial crisis. Kutcher dialed back his acting after divorcing Demi Moore in 2011 because he became involved in many startups and investing. Seemingly, he realized how he could use his celebrity to funnel investors and cash into these startups. He still does that to this very day, and there is so much more to talk about when it comes to Ashton Kutcher and everything he has to do with investments and businesses and Silicon Valley and startups. And there's also much more to his company, or former company, that he had to step down from, Thorn. I actually have been working on a video about Thorn and some of these other companies for a very long time because the information is extremely hard to come by, and I had to put in like freedom of information requests and things. I'm still putting that all together because it's a video I have to work on in like pieces. It is coming together very slowly. So I'm not really going to cover any of that stuff here because there's just so much. And with everything else that we have to discuss, we'd be here for hours. I will touch on the involvement that Kutcher and Diddy had with WeWork and everything with that, but the investments and Thorn and all of the other ties and people involved, we'll discuss that in a later video, as long as that's something that people are still interested in seeing. So let me know in the comments. Very shortly after divorcing Demi Moore, Kutcher began dating his former That 70s Show co-star Mila Kunis, who also had just ended her relationship with her longtime partner Macaulay Culkin. Kutcher and Kunis eventually married and had 2 children. Kunis has always refused to discuss her private life at all. She never even confirmed that she was dating Macaulay Culkin despite being with him for almost a decade. This all changed when she started dating Kutcher, and Kunis and Kutcher began using their relationship as a marketing and PR tool, appearing on talk shows together, reality shows, commercials, paparazzi walks, and also appearing multiple times on one another's projects. I did go over this a lot more in my Ashton and Mila video and went into all of their PR tactics and what they're currently employing to try and divert attention away or cleanse their images with everything that happened over the last year with Masterson and everything that's happening with Diddy at the moment. But they also use not only talk shows and all these things, but they also use the paparazzi to create this sort of relatability about them. And I did go into more details about that in this video, but even things like them going and walking around and the paparazzi just happen to catch them, you know, dropping in here to play table tennis or going to the Taylor Swift concert. Like, most paparazzi nowadays is absolutely like all orchestrated. Yes, there's some very big stars that they'll be caught here, there, and everywhere, but for the most part, most of the paparazzi, it's all staged, especially when you see these stars like holding the drink that has like Coke on the front of it, or someone like, I always use the example of like Ben Affleck with all his Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, these people are being paid for these pictures because, one, you think these celebrities just go out and buy their own Dunkin' Donuts and stuff. Like, I cannot tell you the things that I have seen celebrities get their assistants to do, and also most of them at like events, or even when they're shooting, like they have riders that have everything on it. They have catering, they have people running and getting everything they need. But also, if you ever see these pictures and you can see the label of a product, a beverage, or anything at all, where you can see the label or even like make out what it is, a logo, those people not only have orchestrated the shot, but they are being paid by whatever company it is to be seen with XYZ, whatever it is. And you would not believe how much this goes on. And a lot of them even have deals with these companies because it is so lucrative for both the company and the celebrity. Up until last year, Kutcher and Kunis were pretty well liked by the general public, despite Kutcher's multiple cheating scandals and treatment of many, if not all, of his past girlfriends, along with a lot of other things that he's done in his past that are very, very questionable at best and scandalous at worst. This all changed in September 2023 last year when the aforementioned glowing character letters they wrote for Masterson were made public by the Scientology journalist Tony Ortega. Tony Ortega runs a website called The Underground Bunker, and he's been covering Scientology for over 20 years, I believe. So he has a wealth of information on his website, and I have used and linked some of his articles that are in the sources. As if the letters weren't bad enough, Kutcher and Kunis made a terrible, terrible video. I'm not going to call it an apology video because it wasn't that, where they doubled down, didn't apologize, ignored the actual victims of Masterson, who they both personally knew and Ashton knew very well. And they excused their actions by saying the letters were meant for the judge only and not the general public. Kutcher, along with his wife, practically went into hiding last year for almost a year, only being seen occasionally, like when they went out to dinner with Danny Masterson's brother, which that actually was one of the times the paparazzi caught them off guard. The only other times that they were ever mentioned being out and about during this time period was when they went to very well-guarded parties with strict guest lists, and they weren't actually seen at these because a lot of these parties have no phones, no cameras. During this time period, the only pictures, videos that were seen of them was, again, when they were caught out by, I believe it was the Daily Mail, that saw them with Masterson's brother going to dinner. And there also was one picture released when they went to this after Oscars party that is always thrown by one of Ashton's business partners, and this party is very, very exclusive, strict guest list, and there's, again, no phones, no cameras. The only images that are ever released are images that they take one picture and it's an actual artist and photographer that takes them. So that was really the only times that they were seen up until the summer of 2024, just a few months ago, when they started rolling out this very expensive PR push to try and claw back their careers and public reputations, and also because most people knew that eventually Diddy was going to be held accountable for his actions. And of course, they had already seen what their affiliation with Masterson did. So an affiliation with Sean Combs, things were going to get even worse. Over the summer, they tried everything to try and get the public back on side or get some good stories out about them. They even brought their children to multiple public events, despite the fact that they both had adamantly been against ever showing their children's faces in public or speaking about them specifically, making statements even before the children were born that they did not want them photographed by the media or to be known publicly before they were 18, because they said that their children had the right to privacy and they shouldn't be subjected to being public because of who their parents are. They both stated strongly that their children's privacy was not theirs to give away. Shortly after Kutcher and Kunis took their young children to multiple public events to be photographed, Sean Combs was arrested, and Kutcher's name was once again circulating as a very close, decades-long friend, collaborator, and confidant of an alleged Hollywood monster. So now we have all of the relevant background information on who all of these people are and kind of a summary of where they stand today. So let's now go back to the start of the new millennium when Combs, Kutcher, Masterson, and Valderrama were forming this new Rat Pack of theirs. As I mentioned, Combs and Kutcher met through MTV. According to them, they met in 2002, and Combs actually called Kutcher and told him it wouldn't be a good idea if Kutcher punked him. That's the way Combs and Kutcher tell it anyway. I've heard some slightly different versions of this story, and I did actually find a clip of Kutcher and Masterson talking about the alleged real story, but they do not use Combs' name in the clip. However, this clip is from the James Corden show and it never aired on TV. Before I show you the clip, I want to just give you some more information that kind of lends some credence to the theory that this is Combs they're talking about. And also the clips will be short because the James Corden show and James Corden are an absolute nightmare. They actually tried to claim my entire 2-hour That 70s Show video and take every penny from it because I dared to use a 15-second fair use clip. So they just go around illegally claiming everything. So just a backup plan in case you don't see a clip right now because they just falsely claim everything, as I said, then just go to the sources and I link everything that I use, all the videos, all the articles, it's down there. In case they take the original down, I will put a link down there that I'll host it on my Patreon in like the free section. So just anybody can click on it and you can see it that way because I have it downloaded. Kutcher describes them as a very well-respected hip-hop artist, a very hard guy, and Masterson interjects and says they're not a small artist, they're really big.
A hip-hop artist, very well-respected hip-hop artist, hard. Like a hard dude.
And they also say this takes place on the artist's private plane.
And we stopped his private plane on the runway.
If you go through all of the episodes of Punk'd, there are very, very few hip-hop artists. Most of the people that were punked were actors, and I mean, there's a few singers. A lot of the people that were punked were women, and nearly every hip-hop artist on there was signed to Bad Boy Records during this time period. There are a few hip-hop artists, but there's no one anywhere near to Sean Combs' level. And there's also a few people that do have name recognition, like mainstream recognition, like T.I. But for him, the way that he was actually punked kind of rules out, or at least in this instance, looks to rule him out, because the way that they punk T.I. is that when he's going through baggage claim, they pretend there's like something in his suitcase and he's flying commercial. So there's things like that, that when you look through this list of who was on the episodes, it just doesn't seem like there's anyone else that it could be. But again, maybe there was someone else that didn't sign their rights to let the episode be aired. So Let's roll the clip anyway.
There's one brought a guy onto the plane to check out the plane, but then it turns out the guy had what may have been something suspicious in the back of the plane, and they were
Small puppies.
And they were ushering the guy off of the plane, and he got off the plane and started running because he was just gone. I couldn't and I'm like, dude, and he was like, I literally ran after this guy for 2 miles to calm him down. He's like, that ain't even funny.
It's just interesting to see that clip now and knowing about all of the alleged illegal situations and the trafficking allegations. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's some harmless cannabis or something like that. And taking off and running seems like a very huge reaction. There are some other clips from this episode where Masterson and Kutcher also talk about how much they loved being famous in the early 2000s because they could really go out and they weren't being monitored and people didn't have phones with cameras that they could just take videos of them, and the paparazzi and social media didn't exist the way it does today. So they really go into this a lot in this episode, and Masterson even talks about having all these nude images of Kutcher. But again, this particular little clip of them talking about this big hip-hop artist, this never aired on TV. It was actually the James Corden show where Combs and Kutcher repeated this alleged story where Combs phoned Kutcher, and they did appear on the show together for seemingly no other reason than they're friends, because it wasn't like Masterson and Kutcher in that clip that I've just shown you, because with them, yes, Masterson and Kutcher are best friends, but they appeared on the show together because they were promoting the ranch together at that time. But Combs and Kutcher, it was just because they wanted to. And that is a very bizarre thing. You just don't see celebrities really going on mainstream late night shows like that without either a project to promote or just with their friend. It's always with someone they're co-starring with or launching something with, and it just really, again, sticks out as something strange. A lot of the escapades of this Rat Pack did not make it into the media because of what we just discussed about the no camera phones, of the very primitive camera phones, and no real social media, and just things weren't shared the same way they are today. So a lot of these escapades and what they got up to were only ever in the mainstream media when something significant happened. But again, they were talked about other places. There was one incident that happened on a private plane, and this was when the plane lost cabin pressure, so it got reported in the mainstream media. And this is when they were on their way back from New Orleans. They'd been to Mardi Gras, and they were also with Colin Hanks, who's Tom Hanks's son, and Joe Francis, who created Girls Gone Wild. Joe Francis is a very close friend of Sean Combs and of Kutcher. Combs used to take Cassie to Joe Francis's house in Mexico for vacation, and I believe Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore did too. Joe Francis is, of course, just another stand-up guy in this friendship group. He has been charged with a long list of crimes: tax evasion, bribery. So jumping into 2003, that's probably the year that there was the most publicity about this group. That was when they really started talking about it in interviews and in articles, and some of those have been taken down, but again, they're in the sources. And they also did sort of pictures together at a lot of events. The biggest one where they really were going around together, sitting together, and this was kind of the first launch of their group, was at the MTV Movie Awards in 2003. That took place on May 31st, and I believe that summer is also the first year that Kutcher, Masterson, and Valderrama started going to Diddy's white party and other parties. So because the MTV Movie Awards was when they were first like talking about having this little group, they all wore like suits, not matching, but very similar styles. And there's tons of pictures from this event. The awards that year was actually sponsored too by Diddy's vodka company, Ciroc. Again, if you weren't around or you were like in your teens, 20s and stuff, the MTV Movie Awards was a really big thing. And Kutcher and Combs, ironically, presented the award for the best villain. And even worse, the winner was a 13-year-old girl who played the scary character in The Ring. And when you watch the clip now, it just makes me feel uncomfortable. But the worst thing is the girl comes up and she does like a really good job doing her speech and everything, and she walks off stage with them. The MTV Movie Awards, and this is common in a lot of award show, I guess, they usually, when they're cutting to commercial break and they've just had an award, they will show 10 seconds behind the scenes with the presenter and the winner. Combs leans over and says to the 13-year-old girl, "Are you coming to the after party?" And I know it's probably a joke, but it makes me so uncomfortable just in general because of everything that has been coming out. But also, the day before I filmed this, there has been a lawsuit filed by a 13-year-old who is alleging Diddy and another celebrity R-worded them after the VMA Awards in 2000.
Wait, what? The MTV Movie Award.
As I said, there was a lot of pictures from this event, but there is still some little clips that you can find in the actual whole show of the MTV Movie Awards. This award show was also the first time that they started sitting together at events and things like that, which they have to request because normally they'll seat you by projects. And if you're on a show with someone, and it would always be Kutcher and Masterson and Combs. And actually one of the performances that year was Tattoo, which I'm sure a lot of people remember. It was a really, really big song. I guess it went like the 2003 version of Viral, and it was very performative for lesbianism, which was why the music video got like a lot of traction. And so they played into that for the performance. And after the performance, the camera cuts and you see Combs, Kutcher, and Masterson looking like they're just having the time of their lives. The following year, Lindsay Lohan was the host, and this was when everything was going on with Valderrama, and she was around this group a lot. And she also did some promotional stuff with Combs for the MTV Movie Awards 2004.
Hi guys, editing Ash here. When I was pulling clips for this video, basically what I do is for all the videos, I make like a massive playlist and then I watch them all, and I don't use a lot of them, but I hadn't watched this whole Combs and Lindsay promo through. And when I did, it is uncomfortable. They have like a rooster, which we all know the other word for that, running around, and he's like smacking her like behind with a towel and things. And when I was watching it, of course, I felt uncomfortable. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, I bet you they're like justifying all this because I bet she just turned 18, because Lindsay's 1 year older than me. And then I started doing the math, and she isn't even 18 in this promo. She's 17. The way that they have her dressed and the way that he's behaving and stuff, obviously the footage is horrendous. It's so grainy and you can't even really make it out. And I can't play the whole thing because it has loud copyrighted music. They have her like panting loudly and just noises like that. But just the way that it's a 17-year-old, don't care that she's like super famous. It's so weird. And just even knowing how much power and control he had at MTV, the whole Valderrama thing, this is when they're dating. It just uncomfortable. It makes me really uncomfortable.
Because Kutcher and Combs had such popular shows at MTV, they had a lot of weight to throw around. So they were able to build promotions for their businesses into the award shows. And Combs, the year before, as I said, had his vodka sponsor the event. But this year, it was just shown throughout all of the footage. And Kutcher, Masterson, and Valderrama also had this, it was kind of like a special where they would cut away and really hype up this restaurant that I spoke about a few minutes ago. These segments were just a lot of, in my opinion, false advertising, because they were really hyping this restaurant up and making it seem as though, oh, if you go to this restaurant anytime, you're just going to walk in and see Ashton Kutcher and Sean Combs just like having dinner together, and a bunch of other celebrities too. But there is so much of the award show that they just keep cutting back to this restaurant, and then anytime you see any sort of bottle or anything, it's just Diddy's vodka on screen constantly. So after this summer, things kind of changed with this group, because this is when things were getting more serious with Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore. And if you've read Demi Moore's book, after a very short period of newlywed bliss, she then started following Ashton Kutcher's sort of partying lifestyle. So there was this blip. They got married in 2005. So 2005, 2006, not really that much happened. But after that, Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher were partying a lot, and there was a lot of other things that they were inviting into their lifestyle. And this is when Demi Moore started having a lot of substance issues again. She actually was sober when she married Kutcher, but she, in her book, she like fully admits that she was so obsessed with him that she wanted to be the cool girl that could have a drink with dinner. And Ashton Kutcher had told her that he didn't think addiction was real. So she started having the occasional drink again, and then it just went off a cliff, and she started drinking really heavily. She started taking opiates, and she just really, really went off the deep end. A lot of this information in this section comes from Demi Moore's book, and I'm just using it as a source. I'm not saying Demi Moore is some perfect angel, because sometimes when I use people as sources, people think I'm like siding with them, or I 100% think that they're this great person, but I'm just using the information that is in her book. She openly admits that she did a lot of bad stuff. None of her kids were speaking to her because she put Ashton Kutcher above everyone and everything. As most people are probably aware, Kutcher cheated on Demi Moore multiple times, and she actually found out most of the time through Google alerts or the press. The very first time that she found out about him cheating, she literally found out through Google, and then 30 minutes later, she had to go on stage with Bill and Hillary Clinton and Ashton Kutcher and announce that they were starting Thorn, which at that time was called DNA Foundation, Demi and Ashton. And that is obviously the trafficking charity that, again, as I talked about earlier, I'm working on a video about that. So we'll just leave that at that. Again,
we are recruiting men who are courageous enough, I'd like to see all of you sign up, to stand behind the statement that real men don't buy girls.
That. Again, I'm not saying Demi Moore is some perfect angel. I mean, she was 40 when she started dating him and he was 25. But I do think that it was awful the way that he cheated on her so many times, and the fact he was so blatant about it and just didn't care that it was going into the media and like publicly humiliating her too, because she talks in the book a lot about her kind of battle with the press all her life, and you can tell that when anything happens, like she even tells this story about one time her daughter gets caught underage drinking, and like the first reaction she has is, oh, well, people are going to find out and they're going to look at you badly because the press, and what are people going to say? I think that obviously if I can get that from reading her book and never have met her a day in my life, I'm sure he knew how much that would hurt her. Obviously the cheating is gonna hurt her immensely, but it's like an extra stab in the back to do it so openly that it's all over the media. So I give you that context because although Ashton and Demi divorced in 2011, Kutcher and Combs really rekindled this friendship in late 2008, and by 2009, they reignited their Rat Pack, and this time it was at a bit of a larger scale. During this intermediary time period, 2004 to 2008, Danny Masterson met Bijou Phillips, who he would go on to marry and now divorce. If you look up how Masterson and Phillips claim they met, they talk about meeting at a poker game, but a lot of people have said they believe Masterson met Phillips through Sean Combs. Even prior to his friendship with Kutcher, Combs spent a lot of time with the Hilton sisters, who are very close with Bijou Phillips. Actually, now that Bijou and Masterson are divorced, Bijou is out and about a lot with Nikki Hilton and even posts about it frequently on her Instagram. There's an article from 2002 that I referenced earlier in the video where Combs' assistant was constantly telling the interviewer things were off the record, things were off the record. And in this very long article essay, the whole night that this reporter is with Combs, they go to strip clubs and things like that, and they're going about Paris, basically. He's actually with Nikki Hilton, Paris Hilton, and Bijou Phillips. How Masterson and Phillips met is one of those things that there's not really a lot of evidence either way. There certainly is a lot of evidence that Phillips and Combs spent a lot of time together in the early 2000s, and Masterson and Phillips say they met at a celebrity poker game, but it just really is what you think. Is it what they say happened, or is it what multiple other sources have claimed? So by 2009, Kutcher was treating Demi more like absolute garbage and cheating on her constantly. And this was also when, at Kutcher's request, they brought in a third person into their relationship, and they actually brought two third people into their relationship. And Demi talks a lot about this in her book. In July that year, Diddy decided to throw his final white party in the Hamptons, and Ashton Kutcher co-hosted this party with him.
I'm Ashton Kutcher. I'm teaming up with Diddy. So Diddy and I teamed up, and he put together a little t-shirt. It's about celebrating life. We're gonna celebrate life. That's what it's all about. Let's celebrate life. So Diddy and I are teaming up, and we're throwing a white party that is dedicating to raising awareness about malaria.
Ashton's organization. Give it up for Ashton Kutcher one time. That's why we're here. The whole UN, malaria no more. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that we also buy some of those t-shirts. You know what I'm saying?
He's the only person to have ever co-hosted a white party with him, but he certainly has had other co-hosts for parties, and that is another friend of Ashton Kutcher's that we will get into in just a minute. Hi guys, Editing Ash here. I am going to show you some footage from this 2009 Ashton co-hosted white party, but I just wanted to let you know a few things first. One, the footage isn't the greatest quality. It's from 2009, and it also might make you feel a bit dizzy because it's just handheld and it's cutting everywhere. So it also will be silent because it's a party and they're playing very loud and very clear music, which will be immediately picked up by YouTube's copyright system. So while Kutcher and Combs are throwing white party together and Kutcher is cheating on Demi a lot, Combs and Kutcher spent a lot of time together, pretty much in whatever way friends would spend time together. They, of course, went out a lot, partied a lot. They went to basketball games together, and they also got involved in the investment startup world together. And this was Kutcher bringing Combs into that. Obviously, Combs was very successful in business with music, TV, film, fashion, vodka, and a lot of other things, but it was allegedly Kutcher who brought him into the Silicon Valley investment world. Of course, Combs had investments and things like that before, but being more involved in a public way. And this was how Combs was able to grow his fortune even more through these endeavors. So now we're going to get much closer to present day. Within the last 5 or so years, Combs and Kutcher have become much smarter about how they do things by this time, and they both are a lot richer, a lot more powerful, and a lot more effective with their PR and their entire image. They aren't just going out and partying together anymore. Both of them, despite everything, are very smart, and they both saw the potential with social media before a lot of other celebrities. Ashton Kutcher was the first person to ever get to 1 million followers on Twitter, and Combs was very, very shortly behind him with that. As I mentioned in my Ashton and Mila video, Kutcher and Kunis are really good at PR and marketing, and they use their relationship as a PR and marketing tool. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are probably the best at doing this, and Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard is another example. Kutcher and Combs also know how powerful celebrity is. They know how valuable that is, and I want you to keep all of this in mind as we go over this next time period with them. I mentioned earlier on, one, that Kutcher brought Combs into being involved with WeWork, allegedly, and 2, I made reference to a pre-Oscars party this year that Kutcher and his wife Mila Kunis attended. That was the first event that they attended after everything with Masterson, like the first Hollywood event. And that was a very, very restricted event with a strict guest list, no pictures, no social media posts, no phones, nothing. And they knew, as I said, they wouldn't be questioned by random people or the press. The only thing you ever see come out of this very strict party is the official portraits that are taken of each of the guests by the famous photographer JR. This party is thrown every year by a very close friend of Ashton Kutcher called Guy Osseri, who is also the co-founder of Sound Ventures with Kutcher, and Sound Ventures is their venture capital firm. Osseri and Kutcher have a lot of things in common. They have another company, also A-Grade Investments, that they've invested in a lot of businesses together, and they also have both co-hosted parties with Sean Combs. Guy Osseri is also a very close friend of Combs. He described Combs in a New York Times article as an extremely close friend of over 30 years, and he's also said he thinks of him as a brother. WeWork was the company that Kutcher and Combs both got very involved with and were promoting and talking about a lot in the media, and this was in 2018 and 2019. Kutcher was actually hired as WeWork's strategic partner, and he went around with the CEO and founder Adam Neumann and hyped up this company big time. Kutcher was in the offices, he went to many, many events, and he also brought along Combs to several of the events, and they also judged the WeWork Creator Awards in multiple countries for WeWork. They would hear pitches basically for aspiring entrepreneurs. Hi guys, Editing Ash here. If I get this video out today, the 26th of October, it's going to be a miracle because it is nighttime already. So I wanted to
just clarify something about this guy who's on stage with them. He may look familiar to some people because his name is Gary V. He's infamous for his crypto NFT behavior. And if you remember the viral clip recently of Mr. Beast and Logan Paul, where they're kind of laughing about insider trading behavior for NFTs, this Gary V guy is the guy who they're saying pulled them into a call with all of these other heavyweights, which maybe Ashton and Combs were in this call. Obviously, that's just me throwing in speculation. I have no idea if they were. But Gary V basically got them to buy these crypto punks. And of course, if you have a bunch of celebrities all buying NFTs and talking about certain crypto, then it's going to pump the market and all of those celebrities can make a bunch of money, and then they dump all their coins and regular normal people will lose money while celebrities are gaining it. From my Ashton and Mila video, you'll also remember that they were just fined for $1 million by the FTC for what they did with their NFT. Actually, someone who speaks out quite a lot about this is Ben McKenzie, who played Ryan on the OC. He really hates all of this sort of celebrity manipulation of NFTs and crypto, because obviously it's like everything I've talked about in this video and everything we're talking about here with Ashton especially, and how he uses his celebrity to do things like this. And it is just so, in my opinion, egregious, because so many people right now are really struggling in this economy. And because of all his PR, marketing, and he obviously is smart too, and he has charisma and he's good looking, all of those things, people look at him and think, oh, he's super rich and he knows what he's doing. He bought that NFT or he bought that crypto coin. I'm going to do that and I'm going to make money, when really you're not. And normal people losing money is how the celebrities are able to make even more money. Again, this is something I'll go into in this Thorn business video. I don't know whether it be channel video or patron video, because I don't know if people are really interested in that sort of thing, because it's not, it's more business focused probably than celebrity. So anyway, I'm going off on tangents as usual. So the bottom line is they are really involved with all of these people that are doing all of this, in my opinion, shady and unethical things that are preying on regular people, like the whole situation with Logan Paul. And I know people are looking into the whole crypto NFT thing with Mr. Beast too, but Gary V is also someone that was involved with that Stoner Cats NFT that Ashton and Mila got fined $1 million for. And there's actually, in the sources, I've linked it down below, there's this, I guess it's like a live or like a podcast with Mila and Gary V, where they just spend about 45 minutes telling each other how awesome each other is and really hyping up that Stoner Cats. And obviously this was before everything happened and people lost a bunch of money and they got fined by the FTC. So I'm going to stop going off on tangents now. Okay, back to the video. Kutcher was brought into WeWork by his very close friend, the CEO, Adam Neumann. Kutcher and Neumann have been very close friends since Neumann moved to the US about 20 years ago. Kutcher met Neumann through Guy Osseri. So these guys are all friends together. They all were hyping up WeWork, acting like it was the best thing in the world. And anyone who knows anything about WeWork knows it was an absolute disaster. The founder, Neumann, is married to Gwyneth Paltrow and Kate Manning's cousin. They did extremely immoral things, in my opinion. And honestly, I could talk about this company all day. I do have several videos on it, but a warning, these videos, literally the WeWork video was the first video on this channel, so watch at your own discretion. But there's an excellent documentary on Hulu called WeWork, The Making and Breaking of a $47 billion Unicorn that will give you all the details. The only relevant information you need for now is that Kutcher, Adam Neumann, and Combs were all hyping WeWork up, and WeWork was about to sign a deal for about $20 billion with the SoftBank Vision Fund.
and SoftBank backed out at the very last second. Now, everyone knew that SoftBank had more than enough money to put this billions into WeWork, so that meant that there had to be something wrong, because why else would they cancel this deal? And it was also the way they canceled it. Very late on the night of Christmas Eve. The deal being cancelled was an absolute nightmare for Adam Neumann and his strategic partner Ashton Kutcher. WeWork was an absolute fucking disaster at this stage and was burning cash.
A week. Think about this. You could buy 2 Bombardier Global Expresses at $50 million each, crash both into a mountain. And that was the burn every week of this company.
It was not profitable, and it was just a total mess. So they knew they had to get the money from somewhere else. So knowing the power of celebrity and social media and charisma, and also the power of PR strategy that Kutcher had used to cultivate himself as this Midas touch to businesses, Adam Neumann and Ashton Kutcher went and did interviews and appearances, and according to everyone in the WeWork documentary, anyone who is working at Business Insider, the New York Times, any article that you will look at for WeWork, Kutcher and Neumann, in these people's opinion, blatantly lied about what was happening at WeWork.
After the collapse of the deal, they're out there trying to put this really good face on. He brings along Ashton Kutcher as this pump-up guy, and it was really disingenuous. Adam was saying things that were completely false.
Just a few weeks after they did all these interviews and hyped WeWork up, they submitted a S1 for WeWork, which is the document that you submit before going public. And in this document, you're supposed to lay out all the facts about the company, the good and the bad. And they quickly had to withdraw from launching this IPO because of the absolute lunacy of the S1, and it went absolutely viral for how bad this S1 was and for how egregious they were all being about money and how they were conducting themselves with business.
It felt more like a novel written by someone who was shrooming than an S1.
Many people, including all the people I was talking about in the documentary, and all of these people are business journalists and people like Scott Galloway, who's a professor at NYU and just is very, very intelligent and savvy about anything financial. All of these people saw Ashton Kutcher's behavior during this time period as very disingenuous and harmful because he was pumping WeWork up, but he himself did not invest in WeWork, although he was allegedly being paid in the form of stock. There is an interview clip where it very much seems like Kutcher is confirming this, but he doesn't say it outright.
Then are you a WeWork investor?
I'm not a WeWork investor. And I really, for the longest time, I didn't understand how WeWork was a technology company. And now I do. It wasn't until I got into the bones of the company that I really understood that. But when I actually got underneath the hood of the company, which Adam let me in and showed me exactly how it worked.
First of all, thank you, Ashton. It's amazing. Investing is not the only way to become a partner of WeWork and enjoy the equity and enjoy the upside. And people like Ashton and Guy are the kind of investors and partners that we want.
He basically says, oh, he invested without investing. And most people who see that think, oh, he's being paid in stock, which that would indicate he had all of the potential to benefit from all of this hype without taking any of the risk of putting his own money in.
The notion that anybody is projecting that they don't have confidence in the company, I think is crazy. I have confidence in the company.
A few moments later.
$7 billion valuation to near bankruptcy in just 6 weeks.
The future of the company very uncertain at this point.
While the troubled company is reportedly planning massive layoffs.
I honestly don't find it surprising that he allegedly sat there and bent the truth, exaggerated, lied, whatever you want to say, because I've seen so many clips of him just being caught in lies over the years, and about really dumb things too. There was an interview that I watched for the Ashton and Mila video. I didn't put it in, but it was when Mila Kunis was on Hot Ones, and she's basically having a conversation with the host, and Ashton Kutcher isn't even on camera. And the host says something about, oh, Ashton, when he threw out all those trucker hats, and they're talking about like him basically getting rid of all his like 2000s wardrobe. And Mila like looks off camera and she says to him, what are you talking about? You have loads of trucker hats. You've not thrown anything out. And he kind of like starts stuttering and making excuses.
So here's where I would normally show you the clip of what I'm saying. I did put it in here, but then after I uploaded the video and was about to release it, BuzzFeed claimed it. So now it's 4 a.m. and I'm redoing this section to have to render the whole video again and upload it all over again, which takes a long time when the video is this long. So if you'd like to watch the whole clip, it is in the sources. I'm really sorry I can't include it, but blame fucking BuzzFeed.
Lies.
I'm not on camera, not here.
Lies.
And it's just like, why would you lie to an interviewer about throwing out trucker hats? Like, that's just the dumbest thing ever. But then also I think, maybe that whole little scene of them calling each other out was orchestrated because they wanted to seem relatable or something like that, because honestly nothing would shock me with these two anymore. I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, Ashton Kutcher and Combs haven't hung out together in like a decade. I think even Kutcher himself is saying they haven't been friends for 20 years or something like that. And I also see a lot of people say, oh, well, maybe it was just this WeWork thing or a business thing they did together. And a lot of people refer to Kutcher and Mila Kunis being together as Mila putting her foot down and saying, you know, since they've been together, he hasn't been allowed to hang out with Combs. But I personally, my opinion, do not think that is true. Most people I know still work in the industry, so most people want to be anonymous, but I did find a clip from a woman who spoke about seeing Kutcher and Kunis at one of Diddy's parties. This video is from 2021, but I actually found it re-uploaded on some random YouTube channel and it had like 100 views. This wasn't someone coming out now when all this is in the press trying to capitalize on the fact they went to a Diddy party. This was just a random person talking about meeting Ashton and Mila, and she actually was just saying, oh, it was really cool that I met them. She wasn't trying to imply anything or talk about Combs. She just was saying that's where she was when she met them. I believe this woman is a model. I saw on her TikTok that she was at New York Fashion Week, and she's really gorgeous and has a super cool cat. And I know all of that because I spent a very, very long time going through her years and years of TikToks trying to find the original video, because this is just a clip, but the video isn't there anymore. I found the day that she must have recorded this. It's the same time period, the dates match. She's in the exact same outfit, same hair, makeup, glasses on her head the same way, same location, but the video isn't on her account anymore unless I've made a mistake.
What is your weirdest seeing a celebrity in public experience?
Okay, I lied. I have one more and it's more wholesome. So it was also at Diddy's party and we're waiting outside to get in the line because, you know, it's a list and he's like super anal about dress code, blah, 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 obviously. And for some reason, they're not letting Ashton Kutcher and Mila inside. And then a friend goes up and explains like, no, they're on the list. And then they're like, oh, this is my friend Amy and Joe. And Mila was like, hi, my name's Mila. And I'm just like, I know, but I didn't say that.
Is very low. I did call Diddy days before I ran and I asked him what his time was because I wanted to be sure that I shattered his time.
I wanted to give you all of that information and context about WeWork because one, I don't see a lot of people talking about it, but two, in order to operate what Combs is alleged to have operated, this massive system over decades, hurting thousands of people and ruining lives, it costs millions to do this. And however he made money, it contributed to these heinous actions. Yes, hosting parties and all the travel and security will cost a lot of money, but it will have cost so much over all those years to do that and to employ all of these people who kept this operation going and to buy all of these people that they bought off to keep them silent for 3 decades. I can't imagine the cost of all of this to pay off police officers, security staff, doctors, medical staff, and the like, because victims have spoken about going to authorities and reporting Combs, going to doctors and reporting it. They also will have had doctors prescribing all of these substances. I think when stories like this come out, like Sean Combs, like Harvey Weinstein, that everyone is shocked when the information comes out and there's a trial that everyone follows. The bad man is finally held responsible. He's put in prison, and then everybody sighs a sigh of relief and they go, okay, guys, thank God we got that bad guy and Hollywood is safe again. But there isn't just one bad man. There are thousands of bad men and women who keep these nightmares in Hollywood going. There's thousands of these people who prey upon the dreams of mainly young people who are trying to make it in Hollywood. Sean Combs could not operate alone. And I really hope that through all of this trial and everything in the media, that the other people who are helping him are held responsible too, whomever they may be. But above all, I'm really glad that these victims can finally speak out about what happened to them. And I hope that they get everything, therapy and things like that, that they need. This isn't going to be the last time something like this happens. Just today, the news broke about the former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, who was another alleged monster who was operating this enormous organization that was preying on people and just putting people through the most heinous acts. And I really hope the other Hollywood monsters out there, because there's certainly a lot of them, that they are held accountable to for what they've put people through. One of the biggest questions right now is who knew and how much did they know about Combs? As I said in the beginning, this was by no means common knowledge, but it was spoken about. It was even spoken about on the internet, on random podcasts. I've heard it from countless people in the industry how dangerous Sean Combs and also Danny Masterson were. And I find it really hard to believe that it's being spoken about in even celebrity blinds. And I know you can't read all blinds, but when things are being spoken about so many places by so many people for so many years, and even some random normal person like me has heard about it. Yes, I've done little projects here and there, and I have a lot of friends in the industry, but I'm just a little YouTuber. And I do find it interesting that all of these people are talking about it, and yet certain people who were extremely close to these Hollywood monsters knew nothing. I find that really hard to believe. I do think the May 5th trial date is a bit of a pipe dream, just based on all of the discovery and terabytes of data and evidence and people involved. So I'd be surprised if that happened, but I will be watching. And if you want me to do a video closer to the trial or during the trial, let me know in the comments. Also, leave MVP in the comments if you made it to the end. I want to know everybody's thoughts on everything we discussed today and about Combs in general. If you are down there, you'll also see my social media, my Patreon, where I have a Combs video and a bunch of other videos too. Miss G's social media is down there. And if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and checking out some of my other content as well. As always, make sure to stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.